Hello guys, this is Planners again, and this time I'm gonna bring you two engagements using cloaky bombers as a main tackle chip in order to grab some juicy kills. For the first engagement, I actually need backup from my own fleet, and the second one is fully solo. I was roaming around solo on my Harpy when I actually spotted a solo Abaddon trying to take on a Legio gang all by himself. He was not ganked by them, he actually jumped into them and tried to take them head on, but it was too much for the Abaddon and he got popped. Of course, I did not pass on the opportunity to whore on an extra mile. I'll take what I can. Knowing that the Legio gang was camping the Santa Gate in Doral, I just brought my other tune on a tackle bomber. I'll get on it a bit later on about the specifications on the bomber. And just tried to get the most intel I could. One assumption that one should always make in this sort of gate camps is that they have ECM cloaked up. If even though you don't see it, does not mean it's not there. And in fact, they did also had a Falcon. As for our own fleet, we rounded up to something like 3 battle cruisers, 2 Tech 1 lodges, most especially to save the bait ship that we're gonna use from incoming damage, and also an ECM ship, a Falcon, mostly to jam their own Falcon if needed. One very important detail is that this gang did not have eyes on surrounding systems, so our own fleet is inside Jorun's at 0 on the Doral gate, waiting for the proper time to jump in. You will also notice that Jorun's is 20 AU away, so we need some sort of plan. Just jumping into local and spiking will scare them away. We need to be able to hold at least something. That's our objective. Jump in, tackle something, kill at least one juicy target, and they'll probably just scatter away. As for their own positioning, you can see that they are all pretty much hugging the gate. It's a regional gate, they can easily jump through and be pretty hard to catch them. But what you can easily spot is one Talos, one sniping Talos far away from them. And we decided that that was going to be our main target. I deployed the probes, put the probes 0.5 AU on the Gatecamp in order to get the instant location on that Talos. When probing sniping ships, I always like to push the probes away more than 14 AU away from the spot I just probed. If you keep probes too long near the sniping ships, they get scared and warp away. You don't want that to happen. Okay, I am pretty much in scram range for the towers with my bomber, and there is a very important detail about using a bomber for this job instead of a normal cover tops or even a recon like a rapier or a razu. The main advantage of this stealth bomber is that it does not have the 5-second delay time cover tops and recons do have. It might seem a very slight difference, but it's really huge when you're trying to catch somebody that is aligning out or that is simply aware that can be caught by small tacklers and cloaky tacklers. Getting a scram on the Talos, however, is just one step. I still need to ensure that I can survive for long enough until the fleet arrives, and we're talking about more or less 20 AU. And not only that, I need to make sure that the tackler is not jammed by the falcon that we know that is nearby. Therefore, we devise a somewhat strange plan. Not very usual, but we've employed it a couple of times and it works. We jump in one battle cruiser with loads of tank and filled with ECCMs in the mids and even in the lows. We warp to the stealth bomber, and the stealth bomber only decloaks and only scrams the prey a few seconds before the battle cruiser arrives on grid. Then it's just a matter of getting a secondary scram with the battle cruiser, calling in the fleet, and tanking long enough for the fleet to arrive, the logistics to get a hold on you, and hopefully get the fight. The battle cruiser that I'm using for this is actually a Harbinger. He lands on grid. Uh, of course, I overload my cop drive. I want to get secondary scram as soon as possible. And if you actually check the distances from the corp mates from these Talos, they are actually below 150. This means they cannot warp directly. They got the warp to tacticals, and then they're probably gonna try to save these Talos. I'm actually holding on calling out the fleet. I want them to reach me, I want them to try to engage me, and then I'll call a fleet because we're trying to have some sort of engagement, not just a quick gank. Scorpion far away. Some tacklers start warping in, secondary tacklers warps in, and Falcon decloaks. This is the most important part. Falcon decloaks, I overload my CCMs and call in the fleet. Stealth bomber is out, and you can see the Falcon is aggressing me. He's not jamming me. He's not going to be able to jam me. It will be very hard for him. Even if they all run away, at least this Talos will be ours. I'm actually holding damage on him. I want the Talos to stay alive in order to force their corp mates to stay as much as they can in order to be caught by my own fleet. It's some sort of escalation. Not quite, but you get the idea. Fleet jumps in. I still got pretty good HP, and we tried to go for secondary points on other targets. Unfortunately, they all warp off, even though they had Scorpion, also Falcon, Huygens. They chose not to engage, and I cannot really blame them. Uh, they were not ready for this fleet, so they prepared to call it a day for now. We quickly dispatched the Talos, and shortly after we just returned home. As for the Arbing we used, of course any other PC can fulfill this role too, but the main philosophy is to have a big tank and also the maximum sensor strength that you can get, so that you are not jammed by enemy falcons or any sort of ECM. And of course this gimps the ship too much. You are losing basically 3 slots to counter ECM alone and using no sort of damage mods whatsoever, but it still fulfills its role in a proper fashion. For the second engagement, I use the stealth bomber as a main tackler for a small group of sniping ships. A Naga and a Tornado are camping a bubble in sniping positions, and the first tactic I employed in order to get to them was also probing them. I tried to probe them, but for some reason I did not understood at the time. I could not get a lock on them. The best result I could get was like 20% signal strength, So I did not understand what was happening there. So if tactic number one does not work, we must employ tactic number two. And tactic number two in this particular case is slow boating to them. And as the name states it, it's pretty exciting. Okay, I go to a spot near one of the sniping ships and approach them and wait for it, hoping that they not warp off or they not go too far away. Um, just a word about the positioning of the ships. They are also in sniping range to each other. Therefore, there is the risk that when I actually get a scram on one of them with my stealth bomber, there is the risk that the other one will be able to snipe me quite fast. So I'm gonna use the same tactic, that is, bring a DPS ship, uh, decloak only a few seconds before the DPS ship comes out of the warp, get the primary scram fast, and warp the flimsy stealth bomber away. As for the DPS ship, I brought my trusty Harpy, and I know it's only a frigate and it is also somewhat vulnerable to, of course, snipers, but for this situation I don't really think I need anything bigger, it will be good enough. You will also notice when the RP comes out of warp that while the stealth bomber was slow boating, the situation changed. They were joined by a the third sniping ship, another Naga, and they are all very close together. So with this new positioning they had, they actually lost their tactical advantage. There's no way a sniping ship is going to hit a frigate 20 kilometers away, so I took the opportunity. From now on, the fight is over. Just finishing up this last tornado. He's still actually trying to shoot my bomber, but it's done. The most important factor in this engagement was undoubtedly the tactical mistake the sniping ships made. The simple fact that they were close together meant that they could not support themselves in case one of them got tackled. Had they been 100 kilometers away from each other or within their own fallout, whatever it is, um, I would have lots of trouble trying to survive either with the self bomber or the Harpy or something. I mean, it would have been way harder. You will also notice that once the Harpy arrived, they all walked off very fast. I even thought about going to tackle a second snapping ship with the Harpy, but they just bailed away. And this is why the stealth bomber is very important. Without the 5-second delay timer, you can even surprise ships that are aligning out. Just before finishing this engagement, you remember when I said in the beginning that I tried to probe those sniping ships and I failed? I could not get signal more than 25%. And if you check the mids, you can understand why, and I only understood after I killed one of them. They actually have 3 CCM mods in the mids. CCM mods are going to raise your sensor strength a lot, and the ratio between your sensor strength and your signature radius, I don't really understand much about it, but basically the ratio between those two properties of a ship are going to tell how easy or how hard you are to probe. If you maintain a low signature radius and at the same time if you are able to increase your sensor strength, you will be very hard to probe. Fortunately, this is Eve, and there is always more than one way to catch a mouse. So, I hope you enjoyed. See you next time.